The morning sun streamed through lace curtains as Olivia Bennet watered the roses her mother had planted years ago. The modest two-story Victorian home wasn't grand, but it held generations of memories within its walls. At 32, Olivia had built a quiet life as a bookkeeper, finding contentment in the simplicity of her days. "Ms. Bennet, these documents require your immediate attention," said Theodore Russell, her cousin's husband and the family attorney, his voice carrying a practiced sympathy that never reached his eyes. Olivia scanned the papers, confusion spreading. Across her face, "I don't understand. It says I have no legal claim to the property. Fortunately, your parents will have had certain ... complications. These amendments clearly state the property transfers to your Uncle Richard and his children." Theodore explained, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "That's impossible. My father would never. Your signature is required here," he interrupted, pointing to a line at the bottom of the page. "Just acknowledging receipt of the notice." 2 weeks later, Olivia stood on the sidewalk watching as movers carried her belongings to the curb. Rain began to fall, soaking through the cardboard boxes containing what remained of her life. "You have until sunset to remove your things," her cousin Patricia announced from the porch, designer heels clicking against wood. "Anything left will be discarded." "This house has been in my direct family line for generations," Olivia protested, her voice barely audible above the rain. "My grandfather built it with his own hands." Patricia's husband smirked. "Should have hired better lawyers then." That night, Olivia slept in her car parked behind the diner, where she'd taken a waitressing job. Tears mixed with raindrops on the windows as she clutched her father's worn leather journal to her chest. "They think they've won," she whispered, flipping through pages of her father's handwriting. "They don't know who I really am." Between the journal pages, she discovered blueprints and business plans her father had developed, but never implemented. Innovative concepts for sustainable energy solutions that had been years ahead of their time. "This is my inheritance," Olivia realized, her fingers tracing the detailed notes. "Not the house, this vision." As dawn broke, Olivia made a promise to herself. She would not be defined by what was taken from her, but by what she would build. One day, she would return, not as a woman begging for scraps, but as a force they would have to reckon with. "This isn't over," she whispered, watching as lights flickered on in what had once been her home. "It's only just beginning." 3 months. After her eviction, Olivia huddled in a corner of the public library, surrounded by business textbooks and her laptop. The waitressing job barely covered the rent for her tiny studio apartment, but it left her days free to research and develop her father's ideas. "Excuse me, but you've been sitting in that same spot for 12 hours, a deep voice observed. Olivia looked up to see a tall man with kind eyes and a worn messenger bag. "The librarian asked me to check if you're okay." "I'm fine," Olivia replied curtly, minimizing the spreadsheet on her screen. "Just working." "On renewable energy integration for residential developments?" he asked, glancing at her father's notes. "That's an interesting approach to solar storage." Olivia gathered her papers defensively. "It's proprietary." The man smiled, extending his hand. "Jackson Hayes. I run a small venture capital firm focusing on green technology. And what you have there looks revolutionary." "It's nothing," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Just some ideas. It was just some ideas." "Could transform the energy market," Jackson said, sliding his business card across the table. "Call me when you're ready to talk seriously." For weeks, Olivia ignored the card, determined to build her vision alone. But reality soon intervened. Her father's concepts required capital she didn't have. On a particularly desperate evening, after calculating that she needed at least $50,000 to create a working prototype, Olivia finally made the call. "Bennett Energy Solutions," she said confidently when Jackson answered. "I have a business proposal." They met at a small cafe, where Olivia laid out her comprehensive business plan. These systems could reduce household energy costs by 60% while cutting carbon emissions significantly, she explained, passion evident in every word. "Your projections are ambitious," Jackson noted, studying her numbers. "They're conservative?" "Actually," Olivia countered, "the market potential is exponentially larger." Jackson leaned back, a smile forming. "What do you need to get started?" "50,000 for the prototype, workspace, and initial patents, Olivia replied, without hesitation. I'll give you $100,000 for a 15% stake, Jackson offered, plus connections to manufacturers and potential clients. Olivia extended her hand. 20%, but I maintain controlling interest, regardless of future investment rounds. Jackson laughed, impressed by her negotiating skill. You drive a hard bargain, Miss Bennett? I think we have a deal. That night, in her tiny apartment, Olivia taped a picture of her family home to the wall. Beneath it, she wrote a single word: soon. For the first time since losing everything, Olivia felt a glimmer of hope, not just for survival, but for vindication. With Jackson's investment and her father's innovation, she had planted the seeds of something that would grow beyond even her own imagination. Asterisk. 5 years passed in a blur of 8-hour workdays, prototype failures, breakthrough innovations, and exponential growth. Bennett Energy Solutions transformed from a small startup operating out of a converted warehouse into a publicly traded company with offices in 12 countries. The Bennett residential system is now being installed in over 10,000 homes per month, reported Olivia's marketing director during their quarterly meeting. And we've secured the government contract for the Western Regional Grid upgrade, Olivia nodded, scanning the latest financial reports. Her company was now valued at over $2 billion, making her personal net worth approximately $1.4 billion. The frightened woman who had once slept in her car was unrecognizable in the poised CEO who now commanded attention in any room she entered. Jackson wants to know if you'll be attending the charity gala tonight, her assistant mentioned as the meeting concluded. Olivia replied, her thoughts already shifting to the next phase of her plan. Their relationship had evolved over the years from investor and entrepreneur to trusted friends, and eventually, reluctant, romantic partners. Jackson had become her confidant, the one person who understood both her brilliance and her pain. That evening, as they danced beneath crystal chandeliers, Jackson studied her face. You seem distracted tonight. I received an interesting property notification today, Olivia said carefully. My family home is going up for auction next month. Jackson's arms tightened around her waist. Are you finally ready? It's been 5 years, 3 months, and 17 days since they threw me out, Olivia whispered. I've been ready since the moment it happened. Later that night, in her penthouse office, Olivia opened a confidential file her investigators had compiled. Inside were detailed records of her relatives' financial misdeeds, tax evasion, embezzlement from family trusts, and the forged documents used to steal her inheritance. Ms. Bennett, we've completed the background checks on all parties as requested, her head of security reported. They're in significant debt. Your uncle's company is facing bankruptcy, and your cousin Patricia's husband has leveraged everything on bad investments. Olivia closed the file, a small smile playing on her lips. Perfect timing, then. She walked to the window, gazing at the city lights below. Her empire had risen from nothing but determination and her father's forgotten dreams. Now it was time to use that power to settle old scores, not out of petty revenge, but to restore justice and reclaim what had always been rightfully hers. Schedule a meeting with our legal team tomorrow, she instructed. It's time to go home. The auction for the Bennett family estate drew curious onlookers and serious bidders alike. Years of neglect had diminished the property's charm, but its prime location still made it valuable. Olivia sat in the back row, unrecognizable behind. Designer sunglasses, her presence unknown to the family members seated nervously in the front. The opening bid for the property at 1428 Oakwood Lane is set at $750,000, announced the auctioneer. Patricia leaned toward her husband, whispering urgently, We need this money to cover the tax liens, Theodore. Make sure nobody outbids us. Olivia smiled, watching the drama unfold. Through shell companies, she had quietly purchased the debt on the property. Along with the outstanding loans her relatives had accumulated in their desperate attempts to maintain their lavish lifestyle, the bidding began half-heartedly, with local developers offering modest increases. Theodore confidently raised his paddle at each new price point, certain of their victory. $1.2 million, called a representative from one of Olivia's companies. Theodore's face reddened. $1.3 million. $1.5 million? Countered Olivia's proxy. The bidding escalated rapidly, pushing well beyond the property's market value. At $2.7 million, Theodore began to sweat visibly. $3 million, he called desperately, his voice cracking. Olivia stood, removing her sunglasses. $5 million, she announced clearly, her voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. Patricia gasped, recognition dawning on her face. Olivia. Ignoring her, Olivia addressed the auctioneer. I believe that concludes our business. Here today, after the gavel fell, Olivia approached her stunned relatives. Hello, family. It's been a while. This is impossible, Theodore stammered. You were nothing. You had nothing. And yet here we are, Olivia replied coolly. By the way, I've also acquired all your outstanding debts. We should discuss repayment terms. Uncle Richard stepped forward, his once imposing frame now stooped with age. What do you want from us? Initially, everything, Olivia admitted. But I've learned something valuable while building my company. True power isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. Handed them each a folder. Inside, you'll find documents confessing to the fraud you committed 5 years ago, along with employment contracts for positions within my company's community outreach division. Sign both, and your debts will be restructured on favorable terms. Theodore's face contorted with rage. You can't force us. I'm not forcing anything, Olivia interrupted. I'm offering a choice between accountability with dignity or financial ruin. You have until tomorrow to decide. As she turned to leave, Patricia called after her. Why would you help us after everything? Olivia paused, looking back at the home that had once been her everything. 'Cause proving I'm nothing like you is the sweetest revenge of all. 1 year after reclaiming her family home, Olivia stood in the garden watching construction crews complete the final phase of renovations. The Victorian architecture remained, honoring the house's history, but the interior had been transformed into a modern, sustainable showcase for Bennett Energy Technologies. The community center wing is almost finished, Jackson noted, joining her with 2 cups of coffee. The first classes start next month. Olivia nodded, satisfaction warming her chest. My parents would have loved seeing their home serving the neighborhood this way. The Bennett Institute for Sustainable Innovation now occupied the expanded grounds, providing education and opportunities for underprivileged youth interested in green technology. It was Olivia's way of turning pain into purpose, ensuring that the home that had been taken from her would now become a place where others could build their futures. Have you heard from your family? Jackson asked carefully. Patricia called yesterday, Olivia replied. The homeless shelter program she's managing is expanding to 3 new locations. Apparently she's quite good at it. And Theodore? Olivia smiled. Still struggling with the transition from corporate law to community advocacy, but his legal aid clinics are helping dozens of families fight predatory lending practices. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a sleek black car. Olivia's expression softened as she recognized her Uncle Richard slowly making his way up the path, leaning heavily on a cane. I wasn't sure you'd come, Olivia greeted him. I almost didn't, Richard admitted, his eyes taking in the transformed property. It's not what I expected. Neither was I, Olivia replied simply. Richard nodded, understanding the layers in her statement. Your father would be proud, not just of this, he gestured to the impressive estate, but of who you've become, despite what we did to you. Would you like to see the memorial garden? Olivia offered after a moment. We planted Mom's favorite roses around the fountain. As they walked together, an uneasy truce settling between them, Jackson hung back, giving them space. Later, as twilight descended over the grounds, he found Olivia sitting alone on a stone bench beneath an old oak tree. You never cease to amaze me, he said, taking her hand. Most people would have used their power to crush them completely. There were moments I wanted to, Olivia admitted, but revenge alone would have left me empty. Yeah, 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 yeah. We're so yeah, 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 yeah. What? Yeah, 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 sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. Why? So, yeah, why, yeah, why? Why, yeah, why, yeah, why, yeah, why, yeah, why, yeah, 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 pulling a small box from his pocket. I was going to wait for a more dramatic moment, but watching you today, I realized something important. What's that? Livia asked, her breath catching as he opened the box to reveal a vintage emerald ring. That I want to build my legacy alongside yours, he said simply. Olivia Bennett, will you marry me? She said yes. Olivia gazed at the home that had once defined everything she'd lost. Now it represented not just what she'd regained, but what she'd created, something far greater than revenge or restoration. She had transformed betrayal into empire, bitterness into purpose, and in doing so, had discovered that true power lay not in making others regret their actions, but in ensuring they could never forget the strength of the woman they had underestimated.